Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to explore a really fascinating piece of research detailing how Argentina's technical secondary schools historically managed to actually anticipate major economic shifts. We'll take a close look at how the country built a workforce ready for the future and then critically analyze the hard data to determine if today's curriculum is still doing that same vital job. Whether you're an educator, a history buff, or honestly just someone interested in how countries build their economic engines, you're going to find this incredibly compelling. Let's get into it.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap. We're covering the roots of technical education, industrialization and political models, crisis and educational restructuring, entrepreneurship in the classroom, an analysis of the current curriculum, and finally, the innovation challenge.
All right, part one, the roots of technical education.
It's actually a super fascinating historical footnote that technical education began with immigrant artisans out in the interior provinces in the 1860s, way far from the capital. Building on those grassroots origins, it's just amazing how passionately engineer Otto Kraus envisioned the incoming industrial revolution over a century ago. When he took the helm to create the nation's first independent industrial school back in 1899, he wasn't just reacting to the present. He was building a curriculum for a massive productive boom that he knew for a fact was on the horizon. He literally saw the great chimneys rising before they were even built. To make that vision a reality, Kraus's curriculum was strictly focused on highly practical skills. He basically divided the learning into three clear objective categories: physical or mechanical industries, chemical industries, and constructive industries. By focusing on those concrete areas, he ensured graduates were perfectly primed with the heavy technical knowledge needed to fuel an impending national boom. The whole logic of the education system was entirely based on anticipation. Moving right along to part two, industrialization and political models. As time went on, we see a relentless drive to institutionalize these technical skills as the government dynamically restructured education to match rapid mid-century industrialization. It's really interesting how the educational structures adapted neutrally through completely different political eras. We move from that foundational Kraus model right through the Peronist era of the 1940s, which created the CNAOP and specific factory schools to train the working class, all the way into the developmentalist era of President Arturo Frondizi in 1959, which created CONET to centrally drive industrial development. The state was heavily invested in making sure technical education mirrored economic policy.
And you know, this whole structural evolution was absolutely necessary because of the post-war industrial boom. Driven by a global crisis and the urgent need to substitute imports during World War II, something amazing happened. Technical experts, many of them trained under that original Kraus model, famously set up alternative production spots in places as small as local garages. This sparked an unprecedented demand for skilled labor, and that pulled massive populations from rural areas straight into the cities to work in expanding factories under a Keynesian Fordist model of mass assembly line production.
Which brings us to part three, crisis and educational restructuring.
But as we all know, economic pendulums always swing. We can clearly contrast two very different eras here. Think about the devastating deindustrialization of the 1970s through the 90s, characterized by privatization and massive factory closures. During that time, the technical education system kind of lost its way, aligning way more with general service-oriented schooling. But contrast that with the modern push to rebuild. Driven by globalization and the promotion of small to medium enterprises, or SMEs, the government actually created INET in 1995 and passed crucial new education laws in the mid-2000s to specifically revive technical training and relink it directly to modern production.
So here is the crucial question. After the 2005 technical education law successfully revived the system, is today's classroom actually keeping pace with tomorrow's entrepreneurial needs? If the historical superpower of this system was its ability to anticipate the future, we really have to ask if the modern curriculum is doing the exact same thing for today's globally competitive landscape.
Let's dive into part four, entrepreneurship in the classroom.
To answer our question, we have to look at how today's framework aggressively promotes linking schools directly with micro-enterprises and local businesses. The curriculum, specifically analyzed in the research from the province of Buenos Aires, intentionally integrates design and entrepreneurship. They've introduced powerful subjects like systems of production, which covers logistics and strategy, and productive entrepreneurship, which teaches marketing, finance, and how to utilize business incubators. The goal here is a major paradigm shift. They want to create self-managing entrepreneurs capable of driving local development rather than just training traditional factory floor workers. Next up, Part 5, a hard data analysis of the current curriculum.
So we know the intent is there, for sure, but this comprehensive data overview reveals exactly which technical branches are actually receiving these critical modern skills in their coursework. The researchers went through the curriculum and counted exactly how many subjects in each track explicitly taught these modern entrepreneurial skills. And the disparity between the different fields is honestly quite revealing.
The numbers clearly point to a top 3. Multimedia and administration lead heavily, with 13 and 12 subjects respectively. They are absolutely saturated with design and entrepreneurial coursework. But notice the steep drop-off. Automotive is trailing way behind in a distant third place with only 7 subjects. The focus is incredibly top-heavy toward media and management.
Now, here's a genuinely surprising contrast from that data. Food technology actually has 4 subjects dedicated to design and entrepreneurship. That is double the amount found in professional informatics, or IT, which only has 2. Think about that for a second. In a modern, digitally driven world, you would absolutely expect IT students to be heavily trained in entrepreneurship and digital product design, but the data shows they're actually receiving less of this content than food science students. Crazy, right?
Finally, Part 6, the Innovation Challenge. So, entrepreneurship is definitely present in the curriculum. But researchers identified a glaring conceptual gap when it comes to the ultimate driver of modern markets: innovation. Just one. Incredibly, the specific term innovation appears in only one single subject, a class called Electronic Languages, within the electronics track across the entire provincial technical curriculum. Despite innovation being listed as a foundational goal of the national education laws, it is practically invisible in the actual day-to-day coursework of the students.
To be globally competitive, the research argues we urgently need to fix this disconnect. We must inject specific conceptual innovation and social collaborative tools into every single technical branch, not just multimedia or administration. Students need to be taught how to systematically innovate, whether they're starting a microbusiness, joining an SME, or working in heavy industry. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. For over a century, the brilliance of Argentina's technical education was its ability to see the future and prepare its youth for it. Can today's educational system pivot from merely reacting to the present market, address these critical gaps in innovation, and return to its roots of brilliantly anticipating the future? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. It's definitely a challenge worth keeping an eye on.